हेलो दोस्तों, बिगनर्स पॉइंट में आपका स्वागत है और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमी, डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ इनकम एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट। ये चैप्टर का नाम है। तो ये है फोर्थ चैप्टर। कौन सा चैप्टर है ये? फोर्थ चैप्टर। ट्वेल्थ क्लास के 3 चैप्टर तक कंप्लीट कर लिया है। मैक्रो भी कर ली है और माइक्रो भी कर ली है। ठीक है। नाइन्थ से लेकर के ट्वेल्थ तक की पूरी प्लेलिस्ट बना रखी है, जा करके देख सकते हैं। फोर्थ चैप्टर का नाम है डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ इनकम एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट। We have so far talked about the national income, price level, rate of interest, etc. in an ad hoc manner without investigating the forces that govern their values. The basic objective of macroeconomics is to develop theoretical tools called models capable of describing the process which determine the values of these variables. Specifically, the models attempt to provide theoretical explanation to questions such as what causes periods of slow growth or recessions in the company, in the economy, or increment in the price level, or a rise in unemployment. It is difficult to account for all the variables at the same time. Thus, when we concentrate on the determination of a particular variable, we must hold the values of all other variables constant. This is a stylization typical of almost any theoretical exercise and is called the assumption of ceteris paribus, which literally means other things remaining equal. क्या मतलब हो जाएगा इसका? अदर थिंग, अरे अदर थिंग्स मीन्स नहीं रिमेनिंग। ठीक है। remaining equal. You can think of the producer as follows: in order to solve for the values of two variables x and y from two equations, we solve for one variable, say x, in terms of y from one equation first, and then substitute these values these value into other equation to obtain the complete solution. We apply the same method in the analysis of the macroeconomic system. In this chapter, we deal with the determination of national income under the assumption of fixed price of final goods and constant rate of interest in the economy. The theoretical model used in this chapter is based on the theory given by John Maynard Keynes, aggregate demand and its components. In the chapter on national income accounting, we have come across terms like consumption, investment, or the total output of final goods and services in an economy GDP. These terms have dual connotation. In chapter 2, they were used in the accounting sense, denoting actual values of these items as measured by the activities within the economy in a certain year. We call these actual or accounting values ex post measures of these items. These terms, however, can be used with a different connotation. Consumption may denote not what people have actually consumed in a given year, but what they plan to consume during the same period. Similarly, investment can mean the amount a producer plans to add to her inventory. It may be different from what she ends up doing. Suppose the producer plans to add rupees 100 worth goods to her stock by the end of the year. Her planned investment is therefore rupees 100 in that year. However, due to an unforeseen upsurge of demand for her goods in the market. The volume of her sales exceeds what she had planned to sell, and to meet this extra demand, she has to sell goods worth 30 from her stock. Therefore, at the end of the year, her inventory goes up by rupees 100 minus 30 equals to 70 only. Her planned investment is rupees 100, whereas her actual or exposed investment is rupees 70 only. We call the planned values of the variables consumption, investment, or output of final goods their ex ante measures. In simple words, ex ante deposits what has been planned, and ex post deposit what has actually happened. In order to understand the determination of income, we need to know the planned values of different components of aggregate demand. Let us look at these components now. Consumption. The most important determinant of consumption demand is household income. A consumption function describes the relation between consumption and income. किस किस के बीच में? एक तो हो गया तुम्हारा consumption और दूसरा income. The simplest consumption function assumes that consumption changes at a constant rate as income changes. Of course, even if income is zero, some consumption still takes place. Since this level of consumption is independent of income, it is called autonomous consumption. We can describe this function as C plus Cy 4.1. The above equation is called the consumption function. Here C is the consumption expenditure by households. This consists of components autonomous consumption and include induced consumption Cy. Autonomous consumption is denoted by C dash, and shows the consumption which is independent of income. If consumption takes place even when income is zero, it is because of autonomous consumption, the induced component of consumption. Cy shows the dependence of consumption on income. When income rises by rupee 1, R1 induced consumption rises by MPC, that is C, or the marginal propensity to consume. It may be explained as a rate of change of consumption as income changes. MPC delta Y divided by delta Y, delta C divided by delta Y equals to C. Now let us look at the value that MPC can take. When income change in consumption delta C can never exceed the change in income delta Y. The maximum value which C can take is 1. On the other hand, consumer may choose not to change consumption ever when income has changed. In this case, MPC equals to 0. Generally, MPC lies between 0 and 1 inclusive of the of both values. This means that as income increases, either consumers does not increase consumption at all, MPC equals to 0, or use entire change in income or consumption, MPC equals to 1, or use part of the change in income for changing consumption. 0 is smaller than MPC, or MPC is smaller than 1. Imagine a country, Imagina, which has consumption function described by C equals to 100 plus 0.8y. This indicates that even when Imagina does not have any income, its citizens still consume 100 rupees worth of goods. Imaginia's autonomous consumption rupees 100. Its marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. This means that if income goes up by rupees 100 in Imagina, consumption will goes up by rupees 80. Let us also look at another dimension of this saving. Saving is that part of income that is not consumed. In other words, S equals to Y minus C. We define the marginal propensity to save. MPS as the rate of change in savings as income increases. MPS equals to delta S divided by delta Y equals to S. S equals to Y minus C. Delta S इक्वल्स टू डेल्टा वाई माइनस सी डिवाइड बाई डेल्टा वाई। जो आंसर इक्वल टू आएगा वो आएगा 1 - C। कुछ डेफिनेशंस: marginal propensity to consume MPC. It is the change in consume per unit change in income. It is denoted by C and is equal to delta C divided by delta Y. Marginal propensity to save MPS. It is a change in savings per unit change in income. It is denoted by S and is equal to 1 - C. It implies that S plus C minus 1, S plus C minus 1 minus n equal to 1. Average propensity to consume APC. It is the consumption per unit of income, that is C divided by Y. Average propensity to save APS. It is the savings per unit of income, that is S divided by Y. Now will investment. Investment is defined as addition to the stock of physical capital such as machines, buildings, roads, etc. That is anything that adds to the future productive capacity of the economy, and change in inventory or the stock of finished goods of a producer. Note that investment goods such as machines are also part of the final goods. They are not intermediate goods like raw materials. Machines produced in an economy in a given year are not used up to produce other goods but yield their services over a number of years. Investment decisions by producers, such as whether to buy a new machine, depend to a large extent on the market rate of interest. However, for simplicity, we assume here that firms plan to invest the same amount every year. We can write the ex ante investment demand as I equals to I dash. I dash is positive constant which represent the autonomous given or exoneous exoneous investment in the economy in a given year. Determination of income in two-sector model. In an economy without a government, the ex ante aggregate demand for final goods in the sum total of the ex ante consumption expenditure and ex ante investment expenditure on such goods, with AD equals to C plus I. Subs- Substituting the values of C and I from equations 4.1 and 4.2, aggregate demand for final goods can be written as AD equals to C C dash plus I dash plus C dot Y. If the final goods market is in equilibrium, this can be written as Y equals to C dash plus I dash plus C dot Y, where Y is ex ante or planned output for final goods. This equation can be further simplified by adding up the two autonomous terms C dash or I dash, making it Y equals to A dash plus C dot Y, where A dash equals to C dash plus I dash is the total autonomous expenditure in the economy. In reality, these two components of autonomous expenditure behave in different ways. C dash representing subs- subsistence consumption level of an economy remains more or less stable over time. However, I has been observed to undergo periodic fluctuations. Fluctuations मतलब ऐसे कभी कम कभी ज़्यादा. A word of caution is in other in is order. The term y on the left hand side of equation 4.3 represents the ex ante output or the planned supply of final goods. On the other hand, the expression on the right hand side denotes ex ante or planned aggregate demand for final goods in the economy. Ex ante supply is equal to ex ante demand only when the final goods market and hence the economy is in equilibrium. Equation 4.3 should not therefore be confused with the accounting identity of Chapter 2, which states that the ex post value of total output must also be equal to the sum total of ex post consumption and ex post investment in the economy. If ex ante demand for final goods falls short of the output of final goods that the producers have planned to produce in a given year, equation 4.3 will not hold. Stocks will be filling up in the warehouses, which we may consider a unintended accumulation of inventories. It should be noted that inventories or stocks refer to that part of output produced which is not sold and therefore remains with the firm. Change in inventory is called, क्या बोल देंगे इसे, इन्वेंट्री स्टेटमेंट. इट कैन बी नेगेटिव एज वेल एज पॉजिटिव. ये क्या होता है, नेगेटिव भी हो सकता है और पॉजिटिव भी हो सकता है. इफ देयर इज अ राइज इन इन्वेंट्री इट इज पॉजिटिव इन्वेंट्री इन्वेस्टमेंट, while a depletion of inventory is negative inventory investment. The inventory investment can take place due to two reasons. The firm decides to keep some stocks for various reasons. This is called planned inventory investment. The sales differ from the plan planned level of sales, in which case the firm has to add to run down existing inventories. This is called unplanned inventory investment. Thus, even though planned Y is greater than planned C plus I, actual Y will be equal to actual C plus I, with the extra output showing up as unintended accumulation of inventories in the ex post I on the right hand side of the accounting identity. As this post, we can introduce a government in this economy. The major economic activities of the government that affect the aggregate demand for final goods and services can be summarized by the fiscal variables tax and government expenditure G, both autonomous to our analysis. Government through its expenditure G on final goods and services adds to the aggregate demand like other firms and households. On the other hand, taxes imposed by the government take a part of the income away from the household whose disposable disposable income therefore becomes YD equals to Y minus T. Households spend only a fraction of this disposable income for consumption purpose. Hence, equation 4.3 has to be modified in the following way to incorporate the government. Y equals to C plus I, C dash plus I dash plus G plus C, Y minus T. Note that G minus C T, like C dash or I dash, just adds to autonomous terms A dash. It does not significantly change the analysis in the qualitative way. We shall, for the sake of simplicity, ignore the government sector for the rest of this chapter. Observe also that without the government imposing direct taxes or subsidies, the total value of final goods and services produced in the economy, GDP, becomes identically equal to the national income. Henceforth, throughout the rest of the chapter, we shall refer to Y as GDP or national income interchangeably. Determination of equilibrium income in the short run. You would recall that in microeconomic thereby theory, when we analyze the equilibrium of demand and supply in a single market, the demand and supply curves simultaneously determine the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. In macroeconomic theory, we proceed in two steps. At the first stage, we work out a macroeconomic equilibrium taking the price level as fixed. At the second stage, we allow the price level to vary and again. Analysis macroeconomic equilibrium. What is justification for taking the price level as fixed? Two reasons can be put forward. First reason is, at the first stage, we are assuming an economy with unused resources, machineries, building and labors. In such a situation, the law of diminishing returns will not apply. Hence, additional output can be produced without increasing marginal cost. Accordingly, price level does not vary even if the quantity produced changes. This is just a simplifying assumption which will be changed later. Macroeconomic equilibrium with price level fixed. Graphical method has already explained the consumer's demand can be expressed by the equation C equals to C dash plus CY, where C dash is autonomous expenditure and C is the marginal propensity to consume. How can this relation be shown as a graph? To answer this question, we we will need to recall the intercept from the linear equation y equals to a plus bx. Here the variable are x and y. There is linear relation between them. A and b are constants. This equation is depicted in figure 4.1. The constant a is shown as a intercept on the y-axis, that is the value of y when x is 0. The constant b is slope of the line, that is tangent, that is theta, tan theta equals to b. Intercept from the linear equilibrium. Consumption function graphical representation. Using the same logic, the consumption function can be shown as follow. Consumption function, where c dash equals to intercept of the consumption function, c equals to slope of consumption function, equals to tan alpha, c equals to c dash plus cy. Consumption function with intercept. Investment function graphical representation. In a two-sector model, there are two sources of final demand. The first is consumption and the second is investment. The investment function was shown I equals to I dash. Graphical, this is shown as a horizontal line, a height equal to I dash of the horizontal axis. In this model, I is autonomous, which means it is the same same no matter whatever is the level of income. Aggregate demand graphical representation. The aggregate demand function shows the total demand made up of consumption plus investment at each level of income. Graphically, it means the aggregate demand function can be obtained by vertically adding the consumption and investment function. Here OM equals to C dash, OJ equals to I dash, OL equals to C dash plus I dash. The aggregate demand function is parallel to the consumption function, that is, they have the same slope C. It may be noted that this function shows ex ante demand. Aggregate demand is obtained by vertically adding the consumption and investment functions. Supply side of macroeconomic equilibrium. In macroeconomic theory, we show the supply curve on a diagram with price on the vertical axis and quantity supplied on horizontal axis. In the first stage of macroeconomic theory, we are taking the price level as fixed. Here, aggregate supply or the GDP is assumed to smoothly move up or down since they are unused resources of all types available. Whatever is the level of GDP, that much will be supplied and price level has no role to play. This kind of supply situation is shown by 45-degree line. Now, the 45-degree line has the feature that every point on it has the same horizontal and vertical coordinates. Aggregate supply curve with 45-degree line. ये वाली. Suppose GDP is rupees 1000 at a point A. How much will be supplied? The answer is rupees 1000 worth of goods. How can that point be shown? The answer is that supply corresponding to point A is at point B, which is obtained at the intersection of 45-degree line and the vertical line at A. Equilibrium is shown graphically by putting X and aggregate demand and supply together in a diagram, figure 4.6. The point where X ante aggregate demand is equal to X ante aggregate supply will be equilibrium. Thus, equilibrium point is E and equilibrium level of income is OY1. B algebraic method. अब इसको पढ़ेंगे हम कल.